Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. I was watching the news, and PBS has an article about a news story about Russia and their demands to withdraw, let's say, the United States, NATO, the Ukraine, keeping Ukraine out of the requirements to keep Ukraine out of NATO, and withdrawing troops and things like that. So in an earlier video today, I talked about settling disputes in court rather than the battlefield. So this is a perfect example of how to settle the disputes in court. But that requires that the next question, we decide on the next question, that is, what courts? The United States is not a signatory of the international courts that are associated with United Nations. So disputes never get resolved. So this is where we can solve this problem in court about what to do about Ukraine and all the countries. And that is, there's a middle ground here where we can solve this problem. The organization, one of our things that we're doing is to set up, as part of the international government, a series of courts. And as associated with the exit strategy in Iraq, we're going to start to set up the initial court that will settle this crisis, the Iraq War. The first thing is the publishing team, the professional publishing team, because we have to educate people on what the problem is, the principles, the application of the principles, on what happened, so we could understand what went wrong. Why was there a crisis that came out of this? What did everybody do wrong? And then it's like, the first thing was everybody is equal, and then people have to come up with a plan, and that is to come up with a court system that works better than what it is, which doesn't exist now because a lot of the countries, including the United States, are not signatories of the international courts. The United Nations isn't working anymore. In fact, Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, said George W. Bush had made the UN irrelevant. So the international government, the first court case will be like to set up the initial idea of it, the principles of the idea. And that is the court case between George W. Bush and one of Saddam Hussein's lieutenants. Then what we're going to do is, and when we come together, the experts on the law will come together and either work to set up the courts of the international courts, using that as precedent, so to speak. We're going to set that idea as precedent. But there will be, regarding Russia and what's happening now, like opening this up for debate, giving Russia what they want without taking anything away, security of Ukraine. The idea is that all the countries in the international government will be considered equal, just like the states are considered equal in the United States. No state has more power than another in court. Little tiny Rhode Island, the smallest one, and a huge state like California or New York, when you think of the population there, how can they compete at one tiny little state? Well, it's because in the House of Representatives, it's based on population, but the Senate addresses the rights of the people. It doesn't matter how many senators there are, they're all considered equal. The states are considered equal, having equal rights. And it's the same thing in the international government. It'll be based on population, but it'll also be based on the rights of the people. A bicameral type government, okay? So the international government will have 3 levels of courts. The Supreme Court will, as everybody gets together and writes a constitution and creates a government, the Supreme Court will address the constitutionality of the laws and practices, just like in the United States. It's a really good idea. And it won't matter how many Supreme Court justices there are, because some might want to take time off and have vacations, and some might want to. It really doesn't matter who it is because they're all addressing the constitutionality of it. And that is kind of like a little hint to the discussion that's happening now, is you can't increase the courts and then have some say, well, we don't stand on the law. They sign an oath, declare an oath because to uphold the law, which is written right there. All right. But also they're going to understand the principles and of what we did wrong, and like the letter of the law as opposed to the intent of the law, based on this letter to the Supreme Court. So with NATO, okay, so that the first one is the Supreme Court, and it doesn't matter how many justices there are. The second level, the lowest level, that's the highest level, and anybody can approach the Supreme Court. Okay, and then the lowest level are the local courts, and that will be within a continent. And people will be able to, or nations will be able to decide which continent they're part of based on their culture and their history. England or Israel might decide to be part of a different, might be part of North America, might be part of North America, or it might be part of Europe. They can decide and then be part of that, and that way they're not part surrounded by a culture that isn't necessarily theirs. Okay, the historical aspect of it, they have to decide which continent, and then so the local courts will work within a continent, and they'll just address those issues. The United States, because we're not part of Europe, will never go in and interfere with a dispute in Europe. But then, is Russia considered an Asian country, or is it considered a European country? If Europe is, and that's where we come up with the superior courts. The superior courts will address disputes between continents. Okay, so let's say in the United States we have a dispute between the United States and Canada. Well, Mexico would possibly be the country that will address that. We might consider what basically the other Central American countries will have to decide: are they more South American? Are they Central American? At our conference in Europe, we're going to set up rooms that we host. The first conference that they come together, we're going to have conferences or conference rooms for the continents. And then as the delegates come in and go out, they'll be able to decide where they fit into each of these rooms. It's not so that Russia will never interfere in the United States, and the United States will never interfere with Russia. If there is a dispute, it'll go to a third continent to resolve this. Regarding the Ukraine and Russia, there's a history there that has to be addressed. But at the same time, they understand, culturally speaking, there's a movement back and forth. There are marriages between the countries. There's this long history that goes a long way back, where they know the disputes, they know who they are. And it's the same thing with the United States and, let's say, Mexico and Canada. We have the Mexicans, the Spaniards and the Mexicans who came up into California and then into Texas and California, and left a very rich heritage. There's the Cubans that have come up in the United States. I have a relative who basically is Cuban. Okay, we have Canadians. My family basically has many years gone fishing up into Canada. In fact, my parents had a cabin up in Canada, and I spent a lot of time up in Canada. There's the connections here between all of these people, that, and I went to school in Mexico. So we have all these cross-border things going on. What is the identity? People have to understand what their identity is to address this issue, though. Who they are, and that will be addressed in our third government proposal. So the court issues are going to becoming important in how all these disputes are resolved, and the courts. It's like you could say on a family level, are you going to have a holiday dinner with one family or the other? You're married, and now which family are you most close to? Are you going to address that? Maybe this family over here is more compatible with this one or whatever. It's, I don't have anything to say with this person, how it goes. It's the same thing on every level within families and disputes within families, but at the same time, it's all the families are equal and all the countries are equal. And it has to do handling disputes will be settled in these courts. It's when we have purified our legal system, then we start on this idea of going through each of these steps, and we're going to be building this idea. If you track our progress for 2012, we have the professional publishing team coming in. Then there is the protocol for ending a genocide. That has to do with, let's say, a ceasefire at Oxford and Stonehenge, where it's unification and conflict resolution. And then we'll address the mediation in another country. We'll handle the mediation. And then it's up to me to set up a court system and work with a third country that is neither Muslim or Christian or whatever. It's not part of that idea. It'll go into another country that is not determined yet. And then we'll set up the court case. And then that case, it'll be like a year for each of the sides to decide what their case is and go through the regular discovery idea. This is something that is part of the Muslim culture. They're okay with that idea of mediation and other people coming in and deciding that thing, the case. But what will happen is that one country will, as part of the court system, will address that idea, and then they will decide about that. Okay, but it has to be something that both sides agree to, and then they will go on and settle the court cases there. I have absolutely no say in anything, who wins, who loses. There's nothing. I have no plenipotentiary power. My organization is only going to be there to set up the program, and then the people who do have the power will take that idea forward because it benefits them to do that. If Russia right now is rattling their sabers and they're threatening Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't know how to handle this and how to deal with it, and Joe Biden is in the Situation Room trying to figure out how he's going to deal with the situation, this is the best way to deal with it because it treats everybody fairly and equally. It sets up a structure that allows disputes to be settled in court. So that's the second topic. If you're sitting around at the Christmas table, the holiday table, whatever religion you are, or whatever, however you decide that, maybe New Year's. Okay, whenever you're sitting around and talking and discussing this between at halftime, except of the Rose Bowl half times, but they can't miss those great commercials. When you get together, you can decide on this idea of the best way to handle disputes, if this international court system is a good idea. Right now, disputes, because the United States is not a signatory of the international courts, if we ever do become a signatory, what will happen is all the backlog of cases against our country will just slam us. And the best way to deal with it is to resolve all of them at once by just addressing, inviting everybody to participate in this and to be watchdogs, to demonstrate the fact that starting with the sense of equality, because everybody's in a crisis right now. People are playing power games to try and control their lives, and people are fighting for their lives. And that's why so many people have died in COVID-19. So that's all I wanted to say right now. Wanted to set up the international court system. That is going to be something we'll discuss at our one and only conference that we host, the first one that sets the stage. Then we'll turn responsibility over to the world leaders to carry on this idea. All right, and then we'll go on and we'll assist other countries, individual countries, in helping them set up their own structure within their country to participate fully in this idea. All right, that's all I wanted to say. So like, share, and subscribe, but most of all share, because this information is important for people. People would really need this information on how to resolve these conflicts and things like that, and resolve all the problems. Thank you.